All right, so it came as no surprise to anyone. Liz Truss has now resigned as the Prime Minister of Britain. And she made the announcement early this afternoon where she stepped out of the lectern in front of 10 Downing Street and said that she's not able to deliver on the mandate for which she'd been elected and therefore was stepping down from the position of the Prime Minister. Listen in.
Though, given the situation, I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected by the Conservative Party. I have therefore spoken to His Majesty the King to notify him that I am resigning as leader of the Conservative Party.
Now, her tenure lasted all of 45 days. She announced that the Conservative Party will choose a new leader by next week. She now tops the list of the shortest-serving Prime Ministers of Britain. Liz Truss is also the fourth Conservative Prime Minister to resign in the course of the last 6 years. Now, Liz Truss will be remembered for just how short and how tenuous her grip on power actually was. She was on the back foot from the moment her mini-budget was presented on the 23rd of September. The budget caused the United Kingdom's financial markets and the pound sterling to go into a bit of a tailspin. It was criticised even by her own party members. She was criticised by the opposition, by the IMF and also by the American President Joe Biden. Now, the budget fiasco forced her to sack her finance minister Kwasi Kwarteng just last Friday. His replacement, Jeremy Hunt, proceeded to try and set things back in order. But to do that, he went back on the budget that Liz Truss had presented along with Kwasi Kwarteng. As Truss sat there, ashen-faced, the countdown to her resignation had, of course, begun from that moment onwards. So what were Liz Truss's achievements during her month and a half in office? Well, she oversaw the funeral of Queen Elizabeth II. Her successor will be the first Prime Minister that King Charles will swear in. Now, the Conservative Party will choose its next leader by next week. And so the question, of course, is who is next? Now, is this the time for Rishi Sunak to rise again? The former Chancellor lost to Liz Truss in the last round of the Prime Ministerial race. He had rubbished Trussnomics and has said that this is going to be a disaster, and he was proven right. Now, the present Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, had also backed Rishi Sunak last time around as well. So, as Hunt has announced that he's not going to be in the race to become the next Prime Minister, the question is, will he now back Rishi Sunak again? Now, if it isn't Rishi Sunak, then probable names are also surfacing. And this, of course, is of Ben Wallace, the present Defence Secretary, who could be in the running. Now, the Defence Secretary has held on to his post in both Boris Johnson and also Liz Truss's cabinets. He's also very popular for his uncompromising stance on Ukraine. Now, another name that is, of course, now doing the rounds is that of Penny Mordaunt. Remember, she came in third in the last leadership race. Now, Penny Mordaunt was appointed as the leader of the House of Commons when Liz Truss became the Prime Minister. She gained plaudits for standing up for Liz Truss just days ago when the Prime Minister did not show up in the Parliament. Now, rounding off the list is, of course, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson. He was ousted after a very sour affair, and reports now say that he could be in the running again for the top job in Britain. It's all a matter of speculation. There's nothing concrete about this, but it is being said that Boris Johnson may take a chance to, in fact, return to 10 Downing Street again to rewrite his legacy. Now, whatever happens next, one thing is certain. The Truss premiership has left the Conservative Party at its weakest in decades. The Labour Party is, of course, hoping to capitalise on the complete disarray that is prevalent in the Tory party at this point of time. And also to give us more insights in terms of what is, of course, is expected in British politics at this point of time, we're being joined in by Mr. Mark Brolin, who is an economist, a geopolitical strategist and also an author. Mr. Brolin, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on WION. Now, this was something that everyone expected will happen. The clock was ticking for Liz Truss. But are you surprised at the rapidity in which things unfolded and ended for Liz Truss at 10 Downing Street?
Yes, sort of, because last Friday I think she was thinking that Jeremy Hunt would be more on her side and perhaps keep a little bit more of her mini-budget agenda, but just kept almost nothing. And then there was no point of her staying in a way, because there was nothing left that bore her mark. And that's why over the last couple of days, and actually it has also been interesting that her greatest trump card has not been related to her. It has been related to people saying that we can't have more upheaval, not another leadership race. But since he kept nothing and she was no longer the leader in practice, Jeremy Hunt has been the leader over the last week, she had nowhere to go. So now she knew that she would be toppled. But yes, I guess the speed of things might be a bit surprising. Perhaps people were expecting her to stay on for a couple of more weeks.
Absolutely indeed. And also what happens to the Tory party leadership, because it is being said that this is an unprecedented moment, not just in Britain, but also for the Tory party. It has never been this weak with its leadership in such disarray ever in its history.
No, absolutely right. And I think since the referendum in 2016, you can see the leadership contest as you can see this Conservative Party is split between its two main factions. You have the establishment faction, and then you have the People's faction. And people don't speak so much about these two factions, but they are certainly there. It has been a tribal ping-pong game ever since. And of course, you had at first you had Boris, then you had Theresa May, and now we had an establishment candidate. They have taken turns, and now when the Liz Truss has been seen as more of the people's wing since she was building her platform under Boris. So now we have the establishment candidate back, and they are more in power, and that's why Rishi Sunak is seen as a strong name. But I think his problem is that he's still seen as a tribal figure, because he's much more an establishment figure. Just as Boris Johnson, he has stronger backing than you might think if you listen to UK media. But his problem will be the opposite problem of Rishi Sunak's. He was also seen very tribal. That's why Ben Wallace might be a dark horse coming up, because he's not as tribally littered as the other ones.
Absolutely indeed. Now, Boris Johnson, we are given to understand, is holidaying somewhere in the Caribbean. It's all a matter of speculation at this point of time. But realistically speaking, do you think Boris Johnson has got any chance of staging a comeback at 10 Downing Street?
Well, in a way he does, because it's so split. The race is so split yet again. So nobody is actually, since the party is so factionalized, it's not totally impossible. But I would still be very surprised if it happened. But his chances are a bit, I would say they're a bit stronger than received wisdom would say, because his support among the grassroots has been always stronger than within what would you say, the commentariat. So he shouldn't be totally ruled out, but it would still be a major surprise if he did come back. I mean, the party now needs to turn page, and they might do it better with a person in the end like Ben Wallace than somebody who has already been part and is sort of tribally toxic.
All right, my last question to you is, irrespective of who replaces Liz Truss, the fact is Britain is now going to enter into a very difficult and a long and a very cold winter. The economy is in a bad shape. The cost of living crisis has just gone through the roof. Energy prices are surging. Is there anyone within the Tory party who can actually take over the reins and stabilise the British economy?
Well, yes, I think they have learned a lot. I think the lesson from the Liz Truss era, the very short one, is that you can't do you can't disrupt too much. So it will be somebody, whoever it is, even if it's Boris or Rishi or Ben Wallace, it will be somebody who tries to steady the ship. And I think Jeremy Hunt has actually managed surprisingly well doing that in only a week. Markets are much more steady, and the markets went up slightly today after Liz Truss' resignation, but since she was already seen as no longer the leader, the big story was that not so much actually happened. So the next leader will focusing fully on setting the ship, as you're saying. And I think in some ways people like to discuss UK because it's sort of controversial because of Brexit and everything, but things are not. The UK is not, compared to other European countries, the UK is not doing much worse than the others. So, relatively speaking, it might not be so bad after all.
All right. I think you are ending it on a pretty optimistic note. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Mark Brolin, for joining us and getting us all those insights. It, of course, remains to be seen as to what actually happens on the political front in Britain. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.